Welcome back to Favorite Tip Friday. This is a series where I reach out to contributors from all over the author community to get their top tips on the subject of the week. This week we're going to talk about our favorite books. For most of us, we were readers long before we started self-publishing books. Now some of us still have an insatiable thirst for reading, while others may not have cracked open a book in a while. But regardless of how far we are on our to-be-read list, here are our favorite books of all time. Let's get to the contributors.
Hey guys, this is WC Wrights, and I'm here to talk to you about my favorite book of all time. And yes, usually this is really hard. However, I have 3 criteria that I use to judge which one it was. And if I didn't use these 3, then I would be running in circles my entire life. First criteria is that I have read it a lot and will continue to read it a lot in the future. Second one is that I've been thinking about it for a very long time. And third one is that I will speak about it with anybody I meet. And when I use those 3 things, I know for a fact that this one, yes, the Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone book that has the better cover and not the new one, which sucks a lot, is my favorite. Not only because everything I said earlier is true, but also I still love this story so much. This is the one that taught me that it's okay to dream even as I get older. Or in other words, it taught me that magic is real, and never forgot that since then. So yeah, this is my favorite book of all time.
Hello, I'm Kevin Maguire. Keith asked me for a few tips and thoughts about self-publishing, and here's one of them. What's my favorite book? The Hobbit, of course. The Hobbit was the first book I read for fun. I was an adult in the Navy. I was bored on third shift in the photo lab. I could sleep, or I could read. I overslept once and missed muster. Nobody noticed. I was shocked. Since I didn't want to push my luck, reading won out. Those were the long ago days, before cell phones and internet. We had Walkmans, but not in the photo lab. No music allowed. There was a good reason for it, but that's another story. You can ask me in the comments, though. My little brother read The Hobbit when he was in kindergarten, so I figured I'd better catch up. Loved it. So of course, I had to read the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy. Then, I read everything fantasy. The Hobbit sparked my love of books. Without it, I don't know what I'd be doing today. I have the movies now, but I've read the whole series several times again since the movies came out. I'm sure I'll read them again too.
I'm going to tell you about my favorite book of all time. And it's not what you would expect. My favorite book is Nancy Drew and the Hidden Staircase. Why, you may ask? Well, in 5th grade, we had to read 25 books in the school year. Back then, I hated to read. So what I did was get the easiest books there was, books that would take me 5-10 minutes to read just to get them to count towards that 25. But she was a little bit smarter, and she said 2 of those little books would count as 1. I really hated reading. So then she presented me with Nancy Drew and said, "You're going to love this series, but only 2 books will count towards those 25. I didn't believe her. And you know what I did? I read the entire series. Even though those extra books didn't count, I read them all. And I still read the other books to get to those 25, for the year. If I remember correctly, I think I had over 100 books. My mom thought I was crazy because I would bring home armloads of books on the weekend and just read. That's when I first caught the bug.
Stephen King is one of my favorite authors of all time. But believe it or not, Stephen King's books are not one of my favorite books of all time. In fact, one could argue that my favorite book of all time isn't even a book. It's Shakespeare's Macbeth. Now, back when I was in high school, I loved reading Shakespeare. And I even read Shakespeare to this day on and off. But Macbeth had more of an impact in my life, not just as a writer, but in general, than any other book or story I've ever read before. In high school English class, 10th grade to be exact, I had to read Macbeth. But not only did I have to read it, which I didn't mind doing, but I had to pick a scene from Macbeth and act it out. I was a very shy, timid, introverted teenager. And so for me to stand up in front of a class and recite something from memory scared me to death. But I was really big in school and loved getting good grades. And so I read Macbeth and I tried to find a certain scene that wouldn't be as scary to read. Maybe I could just get it done and over with and just knock it out real quick. And then I found a specific scene where Macbeth is actually talking to an invisible dagger. And that scene really hit with me because I was able to focus and visualize that invisible dagger. And as I'm standing up in front of the class, I wasn't scared because I wasn't looking at the class. I was looking and focusing on this invisible dagger in front of me. And instead of doing the minimal 6 lines that I had to recite, I recited an entire 32-line monologue with all these people staring at me, as scared as I was. But because it taught me to visualize, and it taught me to fight my fears and find a way around things, work outside the box, if you will. And as you know, if you've watched this channel at all, outside the box is one of the biggest things that I try to tell people. And so it's because of Macbeth and that project that I had to do for my English teacher that I was able to learn how to visualize and overcome that fear. And that is why, to this day, Macbeth is my favorite book of all time. Now, with that said, let's keep it moving.
Hi, I'm Judy Waters. My favorite book has so many different genres in it. It has letters, it has historical narrative, it has testimonials, poetry, romance, it has law, it has murder, mystery, lots of different genres all in one book. And we all know, as writers, we know that every protagonist has to have some kind of character flaw. And this book has its fair share. It has greed, jealousy, cruelty, depression, pride, so much more. We also know that our protagonists as well as our antagonists should have some good character traits. So this book has bravery, courage, it has compassion, leadership, loyalty, so many great character traits that could be written into our protagonist and antagonist. It has a lot of overlying themes, but the main overlying theme is that of redemption. So have you guessed my favorite book? It's the Bible. And I think as writers, we can learn from the writing style of the Bible, the way the stories are put together, the way the characters are developed. I think that any writer could really learn from the writing in the Bible. So that's my favorite book. Thanks for asking, Keith.
Hey there, I'm Julie the Book Broad with Book Launchers. My favorite book of all time. It's okay to say my own, right? More Than Cash Flow was probably my favorite book, followed by Self-Publish and Succeed, which we put out in 2021. But if I have to pick somebody else's book, I'm going to say Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because that book was the catalyst for pretty much everything that I'm doing today. So we'll give it to Robert Kiyosaki.
Favorite book of all time. Oh man, this is one of my favorite ones, and this always throws people off because I used to be a former professional wrestler, so some of my background and interest in professional wrestling kind of drip right on over to my absolute favorite book. It's by Mick Foley, and it's called Have a Nice Day, A Tale of Blood and Sweat Socks. And you know, from the outside, you're probably looking in going, but Dale, I don't get into professional wrestling. That's not my thing. But everybody can get into a good story of an underdog overcoming the odds. And that's really what his autobiography is about. It's absolutely just amazing. The unlikely hero who then becomes the hero and gets the things that he deserves after so many years of struggle. It reminds me a lot of Rocky, the movie. If you've never seen the movie Rocky, it's incredible. And I don't want to spoil the end for you, but just the end is just that big payoff. And you're like, oh my gosh. But either way, though, Mick Foley, Have a Nice Day. Fantastic read. I read it easily 3, maybe 4 times.
My favorite book of all time would have to be Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. I love this book. I've read it many times, and the suspense, the trouble on the high seas, the swashbuckling adventures have always stayed with me and made a really big impact on how I think about fiction. And I love the main character. I love the supporting characters. I love the plot. It is written in such a way that it feels timeless, even though it was written in the 1800s. It's a very contemporary book, despite having been written that long ago. And the villain, Long John Silver, is probably one of my most favorite villains of all time. I based one of my main characters on his personality type, and I just had a blast going through that. So that would be my favorite novel. And I always like to think that if I can just capture just a fraction of the spirit that Robert Louis Stevenson puts into his writing that captivated readers after all these years, I'll be somebody.
Once again, I want to give a huge thank you to all my contributors this week. Make sure that you check out their channels. I've got their links down in the descriptions below. Now, if there's a topic that you'd like to see on Favorite Tip Friday that we haven't quite covered yet, then make sure that you let me know down in the comments below. Also, while you're down there, let me know what your favorite book of all time is. Now, before you go, I was thinking, I wonder what you would think about that video right there. I don't know. Go check it out, and I'll see you in that video. Until next time, remember to write right.